In this demo, we're going to be looking at test preparation for computer architecture, COAR5111. Where do we start? Firstly, we need to know what is going to be examined in the test. Where would I find that? I will look under my module outline. So the module outline document should tell me what is going to be. So I've gone to current students and I'm looking under my student materials and I'm looking for computer architecture. So I can simply type in here COAR and I'm going to type an asterisk. Asterisk is a wildcard. Wildcard means anything starting with COAR and whatever comes afterward, it's going to look for it. And then I click on search. So it tells me there's all the COAR. My module is called COAR5111. So I click on COAR5111 and then I click on 2023. I've got my assignment, which I've submitted already. And then I've got my module outline document. In the module outline document, what am I looking for in the module outline document? How do I make this bigger here? Zoom. So in my module outline, oh, there's the zoom here. I can make it bigger here. Oh, this is search. No, I don't want to search. So looking at my module outline document, oh, there's the zoom. That's too much, 100%. Assessments. Here it says my test counts 30%. So I've completed my assignment, which was 25%. I've completed my ICE, which is 10%. So 10 and 25, 35% of the module you've completed already. Test and examination is left now. So 35%, that's not enough to pass the module. You need to pass the test. You need to pass the final exam. Test counts 30%. And what does it say? It's out of 60 marks. It's a open book. That means take-home assessment. You get it at 7 o'clock in the morning. You need to submit it by 9 p.m. at night. Refer to the assessment brief. They haven't given us an assessment brief. Then period. It should be not period. It should be learning units here. So it's 3. Okay, so it's learning units 1 to 3. This one here, your assignment was learning units 1 to 4. So the test covers 1 to 3, and then your assignment or examination covers all learning units. So what is covered in learning units 1 to 3? I'll page down now, and the first learning unit, there's it here. What chapters are covered in the learning unit? How do I get rid of this one? What's covered in learning unit 1? Firstly, it's chapter 1. Then how to assemble, disassemble the computer, identify external ports and major components. In other words, if I look at each of these learning outcomes, I should be able to have some notes on each of them. How to assemble, disassemble, they covered that in the assignment. So I should learn that from the assignment. External and internal ports. That was also covered in the assignment. It can also be tested in the test as well and in the exam. Then it says, identify the various tools one needs as a computer technician. That was also covered in the assignment. Disassemble, reassemble a laptop. So both desktop and laptop was covered. Identify external ports, slots, and major internal components. You did all of this in the assignment as well. Identify special concerns when supporting and maintaining a laptop. That was chapter 1. Learning unit 2. What does it cover? So, prescribed material, chapter 2 and chapter 3. So far, what have we got? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. In chapter 2, what do we need to learn about? Types and features of motherboards. Types, form factors, features, what is supported on that motherboard. Motherboard, configure motherboard using BIOS or UEFI firmware. Firmware is hardware and software. You know, like you get software, which is only programs, and then we have hardware, which is physical components of the computer that you can touch. Firmware is a type of hardware that's fixed, that you can't move, but the software on it, you can update it. So it's hardware and software that's fixed, but the BIOS you can update. Maintain a motherboard by updating drivers, firmware. That's what we just spoke about. What's drivers? Drivers are software. It's software that tells the operating system how to communicate with a hardware. So any device that you would find on that computer has a driver. That driver comes with the operating system. We are all using Windows 10 computers here. Windows 10 comes with drivers to work the keyboard, the mouse, the graphics display, the network card, the sound card, anything that you are using on your computer, any piece of hardware, the camera, the microphone, all this has got drivers. So the drivers tells the operating system how to operate the hardware device. So whatever devices you have, hardware devices, there's some software that contains instructions on how to communicate with that device. That is what? Drivers. That software, we call it drivers. It can be built in or it can be external. If I buy, for example, a fancy graphics card, that graphics card might have its own drivers, or it might have a BIOS of its own, some firmware that contains the drivers on that firmware. So that would be an example of, we call it plug and play. What's plug and play? Plug and play is when I put a new piece of hardware, I plug that new piece of hardware onto the computer, and it automatically starts to work without me doing any configuration. Usually, when I attach some new hardware, I need to do some configuration before that new hardware works. But if I plug in something and it works automatically, that means the operating system knows how to work with that hardware. We call that plug and play. Most things are actually now plug and play. Before, it used to be there was some manual configuration that needed to occur. So all this is covered in chapter 2. Select, so all about, and also importantly, the CMOS battery. The date time settings are contained or maintained by that CMOS battery. So for older systems, maybe you're working with an older computer that you are repairing, then sometimes it's losing its time and date. Problem, CMOS battery. Or you're losing settings from your CMOS. Problem, CMOS battery. So select, install, replace desktop motherboard. how to take out the motherboard, and how to put in a new motherboard. So in this module, remember, you don't learn how to fix the card, or you don't learn how to fix the motherboard. We call them field replacement units. We don't open up a hard drive and fix the hard drive. If the hard drive is faulty, we take it out, we put a new hard drive. If the RAM is faulty, we take it out, we put a new stick of RAM. All of this we call FRUs, or field replacement units. So we just swap out components if they are not working. We learn in this module to test it, to figure out, yes, the hard drive, the RAM, the processor, the motherboard, the power supply is a problem. We take it out, we put a new one, we test it. Is it going to fix the problem? Yes. If it fixes the problem, we have repaired that particular computer. So all of this is covered in chapter 2. Next thing they said we need to talk about is processes and upgrading of memory. And where is this covered? Chapter 3. And then chapter 4, power supplies. In chapter 3 on processes now, what are we talking about with processes? Compare characteristics and features of processes used for personal computers. So what are some of the features? Does it support multitasking, multiple cores? Does it support virtualization? Virtualization you'll do in the second semester when we are learning about network architecture. So we're going to be using virtual computers, Azure Virtual Labs. In the virtual computers, to run virtual computers, the hardware needs to have virtualization support. We'll speak more about that later, but this is an example of a feature of a processor. Multiple cores, multi-threading or hyper-threading, virtualization support, and there's additional features that you need to enable on the CPU. Select, install, upgrade a processor. Different processors fit on different motherboards according to the socket type on the motherboard. I cannot take a now Intel, you get Core 3, Core 5, i7, right? Core 7, i7, i5, i3, i9, AMD, Athlon, different types of processors. So what are these processors and what sockets do they use on the motherboard? We should have a knowledge of that. It's an open book, so you can easily look it up. But you should know that different processors will fit on different motherboards. When upgrading, you need to check the speed, you need to check the socket type that is being used. So does a processor and motherboard, can it fit on a particular motherboard? So that's some of the things you're going to look at selecting and installing and upgrading a processor. Compare the different kinds of physical memory and how they work. So there's different types of physical memory. Can I take, for example, a memory module from a laptop and put it onto a desktop? No, it does not work, because laptop memory, the form factor is different to desktop memories. It might be the same capacity, but the size of the chip, the amount of power that goes to the chip is different in a laptop versus a desktop. So this is the kind of information you need to be aware of. So different types of physical memory. We look at DDR memory, DDR2, DDR3, DDR4. And then you'll see that there's DDR5 with your graphics cards as well. So the graphic card has its own memory as well. Understand how to upgrade memory. Next, we look at theme 4, which speaks about power supplies and troubleshooting computer problems, and this is chapter 4. So far, how many chapters? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, we're still on learning unit 2. Describe the methods and devices how to keep a system cool. Heat damages components. If components are running under high heat for a long time, it shortens the lifespan of the component. If the processor, for example, does not have cooling, it will not start. The computer will not start, or it will come on and it will shut down immediately to protect the computer. Can you see? That's why we put air conditioning in computer rooms. In the server room, it's air conditioned as well to maintain the temperature so that the components work correctly and you prolong the lifespan of that component. Apart from the processor fan, you have a second system fan, you have a fan on the power supply on a desktop computer. You even have liquid cooling. So there's different ways in which we ensure that we do what? Maintain the temperature within the systems unit or externally. With these all-in-ones here, we have external power supplies. So the power supplies for the ones in the labs now is what? These are, it's like laptop power supplies, external ones. Have you seen them? Okay. So there's one here. So this computer here is using this external power supply. So if you look at it looks like a laptop charger, the power supplies. These are all called external ones. The big desktops, they use internal. Okay, so you'll come across internal and external power supplies. Select a power supply to meet the power needs of a system. So if it's an ordinary desktop computer that's used for office work, you don't need a very big power supply because you're not using fancy graphics cards and add-on cards. It's not a workstation. If you are doing designs for cars, bridges, you're using CAD, computer-aided design. So you're drawing plans for buildings, you're drawing plans for aircraft, you're designing objects. Or if you're a graphic artist and you're working with movies, you're working with complex graphics, then you will need a workstation, a powerful computer. Demonstrate an organized approach to solving any computer problem, especially hardware problems occurring during the boot. The computer doesn't want to come on. It is dead. It comes on, but it makes a sound. What are the problems? Troubleshoot problems with the electrical system. Is it the power supply? Is it the computer itself? Is it the wall socket? Understand how to troubleshoot the motherboard, processor, and RAM. And they said this is all covered in chapter 4. Then looking at learning unit 3, computing devices. What is covered here? Chapter 6. So we've got chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and then chapter 6. Chapter 5 was on storage. That was covered where? In learning unit 4. Learning unit 3 covers chapter 6 and then chapter 10. Now in chapter 6, what is covered in chapter 6? Describe the general approach techniques used to install and support input-output devices. Input-output devices are what? Your keyboard, mouse, camera, microphone, printer, and printers is covered in the next learning unit, which is chapter 10. So far, what have we got? There's how many learning units here? Okay, so for learning units 1, 2, and 3, we've got how many chapters? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 6, and chapter 10. Got it? So those are all of the chapters now that I need to go through and review for my test. In chapter 6, we are looking at input-output devices. Install and configure adapter cards. What's an adapter card? An adapter card is a card that I add onto the motherboard. And generally, I'm going to slot it onto a PCI Express socket on the motherboard. See, the motherboards generally come with most of the things that we need. It comes with a basic network card. It comes with a basic graphics card. What now if I want to do graphics for designing movies or editing movies, or I want to do computer aided design, or I want to play games. Most common is the games, and the gaming market drives the graphics cards. So I want to play these games, and the motherboard that I've got has got a graphics card, but then certain games is not able to play on this computer. So what do? I buy a graphics card. So when they are talking about these adapter cards here, I buy a new graphics card and I put it onto a slot onto the motherboard. This is an adapter card. It's also called an expansion card. When else would I use it? I want to connect my computer to the Wi-Fi, my desktop to the Wi-Fi. And by default, maybe my desktop does not have Wi-Fi. So I can put in a Wi-Fi adapter or a card that supports Wi-Fi. I can put in a card that's connecting me to a network, or a card that is allowing me to watch maybe DSTV on my computer. So I want to connect the card so that I can connect it to the satellite dish so that it gives me Wi-Fi. Generally now you can use the external, the USBs. Or let's say, for example, this computer is inside of a business, small business, and they've got CCTV cameras. I want to connect it so that the CCTV cameras are connected to my computer and it records it on the hard drive. Can you see? So there's many reasons why I want to add additional add-on cards or adapter cards. So this is what they are talking about here. So adapter cards support video subsystem, including selecting a monitor and a video card and supporting dual monitors. Very often people will use multiple monitors because they want to work on multiple applications at one time. So on one monitor, I could have one program running, on another monitor, a different program, a third monitor, a different program. So often you will see 2 or 3 monitors that could be that multiple monitors. How do you install it? Okay, so you'll need different ports to plug in. HDMI, do you have multiple HDMI ports? Can the operating system support it? So you need to see which version of Windows am I using and how many monitors does it support. So it's the operating system and the hardware that you need to be aware of, that you need to ask, does the operating system support it? Does the hardware support it? Do I have multiple ports to plug in multiple monitors? Am I going to use HDMI? Am I going to use VGA? Or what other port could I use? So selecting video subsystem, including monitor and video card, and supporting dual monitors. So they're talking about dual monitors here, not multiple monitors. Understand how to troubleshoot common problems with input-output devices. And you've all encountered this. I plug in my camera, the camera is not working. Or I open Microsoft Teams, or I open up a Zoom, or I open up some other application that needs to use my camera. The camera is not working. Or the camera is working, but the video is not working. So often, now you generally would be using what? Your phone to do all of these things. So you can have WhatsApp videos, Zoom calls, Teams on your phone. On your laptop, you can do it. On your desktop, you can do it. So if you don't already have it on your laptop or desktop, then you can practice it on your phone. Then theme 2 looks at supporting printers, which is chapter 10. Discuss the printer types and features, install and share printers, manage printers, printer features, add on devices and printer queue, perform routine maintenance tasks necessary to support printers, understand how to troubleshoot printers and printer problems. So in this, we'll have to have a look at chapter 10. But what further is going to tell us exactly what to look at in chapter 10 is going to be which guide. So after looking at the module outline guide that tells me which chapters and then what are the main learning outcomes, I need to, next step for me would be to go to learn and to see on learn what have they included. So I'm going to go into learn and I'll choose my course, computer architecture. And for computer architecture, I'm then going to go to, on the left-hand side here to learning units. And there's my learning unit 1, learning unit 2, learning unit 3. And then 4 and 5 is the other ones that I'm going to focus on for the final exam. For this test, I'm going to focus on 1, 2, and 3. In learning unit 1 now, they give me a basic description, and then I click on learning unit 1, and it says theme 1, you should focus on these things here. Now, doesn't this look like the outcomes that we just had a look at just now? Yes? It's exactly the same. Let's make it bigger. So those learning outcomes that we just had a look at in the module outline, there's it here as well. It says there's your learning objectives here. Then theme 1 is taking the computer apart and putting it back together. So then I click on it and then I see, okay, assembly, disassembly, what are the tools that I need to take the computer apart and put it back together. So I click on the learning unit again, and then I look at what are some of the computer functions, what hardware is required, read this article, find answers in this article. So then I go and I click on these different articles, and then I just skim through. You want to build, what can you afford, what are you going to find inside, motherboard, CPU, memory, storage, and then the case fans and supplies. So then they're even telling me these are the types of RAM that you're going to find, DDR5, DDR4, DDR3. And then the CPU, different types of CPUs, the RAM. So this is giving me a very summarized version of what to do. And it's very, very simple as well. Test your system, and then there's some frequently asked questions here or FAQs. So can you see this is a short article that shows me and tells me what is the key points here. Because when I go to my textbook and if I go to my slides just now, it's going to contain much more detailed information. All right. So I want to get a good overview of what exactly is required. So I continue. What is the other article that they said here? Did I click on it? Find the answers in this article. 11 types of ports and how to use them. So this one is talking about what are the computer ports and what are they used to do. HDMI, RCA, USB. There's many different types of USB ports, and there's a 3.5 millimeter port that's used to plug in my headphones. But most of us are using wireless now, or even USB headphones, USB-C headphones. SD card reader, display port. So these are the common ports that are there. So very quick summaries of each of the ports are given to us, and we like looking at internet articles versus reading textbooks. So if you want to look at web pages, these are the web pages to look at when you are preparing. And I'll continue looking at the different types of articles here. Once I've completed this exercise, it's giving me a good idea now about learning unit 1 and what is required. Then I dig deeper. How do I go deeper now? I go to more resources. I look for the lecturer slides. And then module 1. So module 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 10 is here. Okay, so I've got all the necessary slides that is required. So I go into module 1 slides. What did it do? Downloaded it. Okay. So I clicked on it. It's downloaded the slides. I'm going to open up the slide. So I can see so far the key points were covered in the module outline document. I then went where to learn. I clicked on the learning unit itself. I looked at what information do they have in the learning unit. They gave me links to some articles on the internet that contains the information. That summarized the information very nicely for me, and it gave me a big picture overview of what is required. Now I want to dive in a little bit more because I need to know more detailed information. So what do I do now? I have a look at my slides and I page through my slides and I see these objectives here: disassemble, reassemble a computer, a desktop and a laptop, and then it says exploring. So they've got detailed information now on how guidelines before you actually go and look at the computer. What are the safety precautions you need to take? There's all the safety precautions that's given to you here. This was covered in the assignment. Then step 1, plan and organize your work, gather your tools. What do you need to do? They take me through the process. So this is now giving me the details of how to actually assemble, disassemble that computer. Opening of the case. What do I need to be aware of and where are the different components found? Expansion cards, memory modules, hard drives, power supply, motherboard, and processor. Looking inside the PC, that's what it looks like. That's where I'm going to put the RAM. Opening the case, form factors. Form factors is the size, shape, layout of the motherboard, and it fits in different types of cases as well. So the motherboard needs to be able to be mounted into a specific type of a case. So you'll need to check that. So those are the two form factors used by most desktop and tower cases. Includes ATX and micro ATX. So two form factors, ATX and micro ATX, they're giving us here. Then they're telling us about the ATX power supply. How is it connected? What are the number of pins that are used to connect? So I keep going on and I'm reading it. Opening the case, they're giving me more information. There's an example of an adapter card or an add-on card. This card is going to slot onto the motherboard, onto a connector. What is the connector called? PCI Express times 16. So this is the type of the connector that's found on the motherboard that the card is going to slot onto. Okay, so just by looking at the first chapter slides, I'm even thinking about what am I going to do with the motherboard section. And I continue looking at this now. Micro ATX, what is different about micro ATX compared to ATX? Removing the expansion cards. Remember we said expansion card, adapter card. They used adapter card before, expansion card. So you'll come across different terms referring to exactly the same things. But now I need to be familiar with these different terms. And I continue in this process. I go ahead and have a look at removing of the motherboard, removing a power supply, and I continue. Remember they said you need to test power problems. So what are they using here? Power supply tester. Multimeter could also be used. There's an example of a multimeter. Okay, what is it used to do? Test power related problems. Removing of the drives. So step by step, they're taking me through the process of how to disassemble and then how to put it back together again. Laptop computers, they go through exactly the same process here as well. So I page through the slides, and then I get a good idea of the details that was required in each of these different steps. Now, you would have summarized this information and put it together for your assignment. So that was what was covered in chapter 1. Now, what type of questions could I be asked on chapter 1? Where would I go? Practice tests. So I go to more resources, and then I look for the practice tests. And then you've already answered it for ISTAS, so 1, 2, and 3. So let me just rename this one. Does it allow me to edit the test? No, that's not the one I want. Let me go back. Okay, I'm just going to call it chapter 1. So module 1, chapter 1, same thing, but just to make it all uniform, I just renamed it. So I click on it and I click on begin. This we have done previously, but I just want to page through quickly to see what type of questions are being asked here. A few users need to connect to an external monitor, external keyboard and mouse, and to a wired network cable to their laptop while visiting a remote office. The laptops are not from the same manufacturer. Which of the following devices will allow the users to connect their computers to external devices? Which one? If I don't know, you can answer this like you've done it before. I'm just going to answer it, submit it, and then I've made it so that it shows you your answers. So maybe I can use this when I'm learning. So I can do this, I can learn it, and then I can retake the test, and I can then answer it without looking at the answers. So that's the best way to learn. So port replicator allows me, they said, see, docking station won't be applicable. Why? Because they said that there's different manufacturers. According to the manufacturer, docking station varies. But port replicator, you can plug it in no matter who made your laptop, whether it was IBM, Lenovo, what else? Mercer. What other laptops are you getting? HP, Dell. All these are different manufacturers. And then I continue to go through these questions and answers in exactly the same way. Now, they've changed the textbook from last year. So some of the questions from the past papers what I would suggest you do is go through this exactly like I'm going through it now. Once you've completed this, then you can go back and have a look at past question papers. So I can go back to Rosebank College. So on the intranet, I can go back and I can look for under the past papers, or they've added the link right here. So it used to be under library before. So they've got past papers. And what am I looking for? COAR. And I'm going to put 5111 because there's different papers. And then I'm just going to search and see what it comes up with. So I can see if I've searched for COAR 5111, there's exam and there's a test paper here. So I'm going to look at the test paper. To give me an idea of what type of questions were asked previously. So question 1, matching the columns. Question 2 was multiple choice questions. Question 3, short questions. Question 4, a little bit longer questions. So there were 4 questions, okay? So it gives me an idea of the types of questions that were asked, but I'll look more at the practice test, okay? So this just gave me an idea of the structure of the paper. So I've covered one chapter. You've got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 6, and chapter 10. In total, that's 6 chapters. So this process that I've gone through now is how you're going to prepare for your test. Okay? I've only gone through one chapter. You need to go through the other 5 chapters. By doing this, you're in the best position to pass your test well. So you know now where to go and learn. You know where to go on your slides. You know where to go practice test. Maybe they might even repeat some questions from the practice test. But if you didn't go through the practice test, how would you know? Can you see? So this is the way to prepare for your take-home test, also for the take-home exam.